So yesterday I was freely acknowledging that I may be a little too hard on the Olympics, and also freely acknowledging that maybe if I just paid attention to those sentimental little vignettes that they run before the otherwise unknown athletes go and compete, that I would appreciate them more because I would appreciate how much they'd overcome, and I could celebrate with them more when they inevitably win a medal, or hurt with them more when they inevitably lose. Whichever way it works, I'm better off, and I'm a better fan, and I'm a better Olympic enjoyer if I understand where they've been and what they've had to overcome. Likewise, yesterday and today, we're considering what the original audience to the book of Esther had to overcome and what their backstory was, and how that book, particularly the epilogue of that book that we've been looking at over the last week or so, would come off to them in light of all of that. 586 BC, the southern kingdom is hanging on by a thread, but along comes Nebuchadnezzar, and he's just too big, and some king had already blurted out how much gold and money they had in there, and sure enough, comes back to bite him in the butt. Nebuchadnezzar's like, I need a W. There's an easy one sitting right there. He lays siege to Jerusalem. It's horrible. The siege breaks mercifully. The text is a little bit quiet about all the details of how that siege worked out, because sieges, they're always bad while they're going on, and they're always worse when they're over. But however it goes down, the city breaks, the city's defenses are shattered, and eventually, brick by brick, all the important buildings are pulled down, and everybody's taken away into captivity in Babylon and Jerusalem and the temple and the southern kingdom, the kingdom of Judah. It's all gone. And surely it would have seemed to the Jews of that time that with it went their connectedness with God. With it went the hope that God's promises for their role in God's redemptive plan. They probably imagined that stuff was over, or probably a lot of them did. But as we read yesterday, somewhere in there, Jeremiah, the weeping prophet who saw all of this stuff coming and whose heart was broken over it all coming, he sends a letter to all of these exiles who got taken away into Jerusalem. And the letter doesn't say, get ready to fight, boys. The letter says, this is from God, this is what the Lord God Almighty says, live well in the city, have kids, be there, work for the prosperity of the city. Don't think that I've forgotten about you. I'm not done with you. I still have plans to prosper you and not to harm you. I'm going to restore you. And, well, time goes by. And sure enough, 70 years after the fall of Jerusalem, the temple is rebuilt under a new empire, the Persians. And even then, though, what we glean is that it's tough sledding for the next several decades. A whole lot of people, a whole lot of Jews, that is, they didn't go back. They stayed put in Susa or Persepolis or Babylon or other big fancy cities. They're scattered all over this Persian Empire, which sits over the top of the remains of the Babylonian Empire. Only a few, a small percentage, are back in Jerusalem carrying out sacrifices and trying to rebuild the way of life that they lived under back there. Well, in the midst of this identity crisis for the Jewish people, and in the midst of this, no doubt, grappling with the promises that are still hanging out there, notably one of which is from Jeremiah in chapter 29 that we read yesterday and that we talked about a second ago. It's during all of this time that maybe the Jews start to get a little bit complacent around the empire, and they're like, yeah, we're good, this is good enough. Do we even really need God to take care of us? I don't know. Who knows what they were thinking? I'm sure that it was a broad spectrum of faith and doubt and grappling with their ethnic history and their backstory. But during that time, Darius dies, his son Xerxes comes to power. There's some almost Alexander the Great-like conquest that occurs, but not quite. The Greeks hold him off. He loses, and it seems like he's never quite the same after that if you read between the lines of the text. And somewhere in all of that, it costs him a wife, maybe a good relationship with a second. And there's a contest, and Esther becomes queen. And it seems like that's just a nice story because nobody knows she's Jewish anyway. But then a little bit of time goes by, and the king's right-hand man, the sly, slippery, evil enemy of the Jews, Haman, comes to power, and he uses the authority of the king to issue an edict that's going to result in all of the Jews everywhere being killed. Nobody is safe. And it's under that pressure that Queen Esther comes to the forefront, and people find out that the Queen of Persia is a Jew, and that she intervened on their behalf with her family member, her relative Mordecai, and that Haman was defeated, and that Haman and his 10 sons, who all would have carried this vendetta with them into time immemorial, they all got hung on Haman's own gallows, and the Jews are free to defend themselves, and they win, and this new holiday is established, and Mordecai, a Jew, ascends to the throne of effectively the full power over the Persian Empire as Xerxes continues to waste away in his ability to lead. And there's peace and there's unity, and a new holiday gets added to the roster of holidays to commemorate and to remember. And surely part of what that celebration must have included was people remembering back to where they had been, thinking about the backstory and what had happened and how bleak and horrible things looked in that passage we read yesterday about the siege and Nebuchadnezzar 100 years ago and change at the time of Esther with the destruction of the temple. And I mean, it looked like there was no hope whatsoever. But the prophets said there was hope. God said there was hope through the prophets. And now I have to think that as Purim is being initiated and celebrated for the first time, as the actual events at the end of the book of Esther play out, and as the Jews win and Haman is defeated, I have to think that they looked at that and thought, well, all that stuff that God said about working for the prosperity of the city and being good citizens and having kids and just being where we are for the time being and knowing that God is still present even when not visible and that he still has plans to prosper us and not to harm us. Surely, when they saw Esther wearing that crown, standing on the balcony, waving at all of them next to the king of Persia, and when they saw Mordecai at the right hand of his king in these lavishly and very specifically described, I might add, robes, I have to imagine that the celebrating Jews looked at that and thought to themselves, well, how did that happen? And then probably many of them remembered, well, they kind of did what they were supposed to do according to what God said through the prophet Jeremiah. He worked for the well-being of the city, Mordecai did. He bailed out the king, let him know about a plot to have him killed. That's being a good citizen. That's working for the well-being of your community. He saved the king. And that boomeranged around in a good way. Esther was charming and delightful, and she won over the entire court. All of that was well invested when she pushed all of those relational chips to the middle of the table. How did she get all those relational chips in the first place? Well, part of it was by being gorgeous, based on what the text describes her as being, but the bigger part was being savvy. She was shrewd and she was smart. She was, quote, lovely in form and figure, but she was also lovely in terms of her character and her ability to make people feel good and to understand and be empathetic and attentive to who they were and what really made them tick. And so she had everything she needed when the time such as this arose. Now, really, if you think about the whole backstory and everything that everybody had been through, this had to have felt like a huge payoff on all of it. A reversal of the destruction wrought by Nebuchadnezzar, and a blessing that came because even if they weren't perfect and even if they were flawed characters, more or less, Mordecai and Esther embraced the instruction from God in the letter from Jeremiah to the exiles, and as a result were well positioned and well rewarded and able to do something incredibly important in playing the role they played in saving their people. I'm guessing that it wasn't just the symmetrical thinking completionists in the Jewish crowd when all of this was going down who would have caught this, but rather I think this was a huge part of what undergirded the celebration in general. I was telling you the other day about our Achievement Unlocked stickers for Esther. I've got those in. They look fantastic. I've got a little bit of family travel coming up right now, so it won't be right away, but here in a couple weeks or so, I'll get it set up so that anybody who wants to can go and buy a white outline version of that sticker to put somewhere to commemorate as a marker of this season and time that we spent together on this. Also, automatically, everybody who's supporting the program at this time in any way, on any level, on any platform, is going to get that gold outline Esther commemorative Achievement Unlocked sticker mailed to you along with the Nehemiah Field Notes book that I am sending out to you as well. And then a few of you who've gone wildly above and beyond, you're going to get the super limited edition, super amazing hologram version as my way of trying to say thank you. I did have some of you ask about whether there are going to be Matthew stickers, and the answer is a strong yes. Those are pretty much designed and good to go. And I'll have to tell you more about what that looks like next time around, but it's breathtaking. It is wonderful. No one has looked at the Matthew sticker who I've shown a draft to yet and responded in any way other than wow. And I can say that without bragging because I didn't do it. Bethany did it. She's amazing. And so it'll be a while yet before the Matthew stickers are made available to everybody, but that's coming up soon too, and I will keep you posted. The sticker system, this is so much fun. All right, we'll continue our wrap-up of the book of Esther next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.